Welcome to the 2000 Cubit Rule. It is Mark Rowan, your host. We're so glad that you're tuning in with us again. We love to have conversations with business people who are called by God to do the work that He's put in their hands. So that's what we're going to be doing today, as usual. Want to remind people that if you're looking for a way to simplify your tech stack, check us out. And that's what we help businesses with. So if you're a Christian person and you're an entrepreneur, you're an author, speaker, you're really trying to expand what you're doing and want help with that, check us out. We'd love to talk to you. So just remember that. But beyond that, we are having a great conversation today, and we want to welcome in our guest. His name is Zach Norris, and he is the founder of Lamb Telecom. How are you doing today, Zach?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm glad that we could carve out some time. It's early for me. We're clocking in at a little after 8 a.m. You're actually in another part of the world. Where are you located?
Yeah, out in South Korea. And so I very much so appreciate you working with me on time. It's a late night tonight for me and then an early morning tomorrow, but it's all worth it and it makes it work out. So very much appreciate the flexibility.
Yeah, no worries. We got to connect the other day and found out that you have this Korea connection. My wife is half Korean. For those that don't know, that have seen Jenny maybe here or there, her dad is from Seoul, South Korea. So that was fun as we got to know each other to see those connections. And but you're not originally from Seoul. We want to get to know a little bit about you, where you grew up, and how you got into telecom in that space.
Yeah, definitely. So originally from Colorado, I grew up in Fort Collins, kind of northern Colorado area, and spent pretty much the first, really all of my life there for the most part. And went to school there, went to Colorado State University, studied finance and business and languages, and um, studied like Mandarin, Arabic, Spanish. Had a lot of fun over there, and it was really cool. It was a great school, and ended up kind of going the finance route. Figured I'd probably get a role in something like investment banking or whatnot until I realized that that was a glorified PowerPoint maker role, and also that it was particularly competitive. And so I ended up applying to several different places, and it was nearly impossible for me to get a job. And it was just so difficult. I was trying to find internships. The classic way of getting into that type of role was you do an internship your junior year of the summer, and then ideally stay on part-time through the year doing actual work, and then beyond that, after you graduated your senior year, you'd go in and you'd do that. And so I figured that was the route I was going to go. Applied everywhere. I mean probably several dozen applications, quite frankly. Tried to network with the right people, and it still didn't work. It tried all the things in the book, until I applied to a place by the name of Zayo. And Zayo is a fiber company out of Boulder. It was a fascinating company. Ended up applying there for a financial planning and analysis role. Jumped in there, did a couple of interviews, and ended up unfortunately getting beat out to someone else. And so I was back at square one, ready to just kind of stick around and just work around my college. And I ended up working for Red Bull at the time, doing merchandising. Nothing even remotely related to what I'm doing right now. Um, but that being said, ended up getting a call a few weeks later, maybe two or three, and had someone call back and say, "Hey, we saw your resume. We saw you spoke a bunch of languages. We'd love to have you join our global reach team and work on our product management team." And so at that point, I was like, "Please, like anything. I want to have a little extra money to go have fun and eat and do whatever." And so it was a solid opportunity. Went down there, did another interview for that. Got that job very quickly. That role turned into a different position. So I was working on global reach product management, and then they ended up expanding that internship to another, I guess, part of the company to do customer intelligence. And so that was really, identifying several customers, putting them into a system to track opportunities, why they would buy fiber, different types of fiber, how much they could spend, and doing an analysis on that and reporting it to leadership. And so was able to do both of those roles in tandem during my time there and work overtime. So it was great, turned out wonderful. Made some extra cash that summer and then continued to stay on part-time that year and then jumped in full-time after that. And so that was kind of my initial push into the, technology and telecom world.
Mm.
Very, very strange, roundabout way of getting into there, seeing as I expected to do finance. But after that, ended up getting a job offer at a voice company out in California. Took that role, and that was more of a sales side role, but technical sales for phone systems, kind of like a Zoom on steroids type of thing.
Mhm.
Did that for a little bit, and then realized I could probably do what I was doing there, but on my own. And so I jumped out and tried doing a little bit of what I was doing before, training people to do at least. Did it on my own and figured, why not turn this into what could be really truly a ministry. And so that's how
Mm.
Lamb Telecom was born, was really just this idea of if I am working for 40 hours a week and maybe 40 plus, depending on what the week looks like, I might as well do it for the Lord. And
Mm.
so obviously the name is quite intentional, but I also just felt like we could do some sort of ministry work with this. So really the way that we work is we help churches and other organizations for that matter um, find technology solutions, and we save them a ton of money. At this point, it's in the millions of dollars that we've saved for those types of organizations on IT expenses. And the way that we built it, we don't charge a dime to the church from us. We do
Yeah.
free advisory services for churches, faith-based organizations, ministries, and it's been a wonderful model. It's turned out really great for us. We're expanding right now, and so it's very exciting, and it's really cool to see the rewards of serving others, and it's been an amazing experience thus far. So that's the quite long story of how we ended up here, but all of the context matters, of course. So
Yeah. No, it's a couple things that came to mind as you're telling your story. First of all, the whole I'm studying multiple languages. Like most people are like, oh yeah, I got to do one of the languages. It's a requirement. I'll take Spanish or French, and once I get through that, I got all the things I need to take. So how did you have such a, proclivity to learn languages? That was something that you just always were interested in, or how did that play out?
yeah, they just clicked, man. Like I think really what it was, I didn't know it at the time. This is before Christ for me, but I've discovered that this is an immensely helpful God-given gift to communicate with people.
Mhm.
Um, and so when I was a kid, I was in Spanish classes, and so I took Spanish for forever, um, and did some travel to Spanish-speaking countries, and was able to practice a little. Have some Hispanic family that my brother had married into, so I got to practice with them, and just kept practicing as much as I could. And I even remember in my yearbook, a Spanish teacher from high school ended up writing something along the lines of, "It's great to see a Hispanic man like you would like to learn more about the language and the culture." Apparently, I had gotten so proficient in the language that they thought I was Hispanic, even though I am not. So
Yeah.
um, that it felt like a nice compliment, but it was also kind of funny. But anyway, took Spanish classes for a while, got a lot of practice there. Parents had popped me into Chinese classes when I was younger as well. So did those for a few years, took a break, and then in high school, I was maxing out the Spanish courses and eventually realized that they would actually pay for my courses in college if I went while I was in high school and did dual enrollment. So it was my version of a scholarship to get a bunch of elective credits done. Um, and so I just, started Chinese up again, Mandarin Chinese, did that at the college, maxed out the Spanish courses, started that. And then in my final year of high school, I ended up saying, I've got some extra time here. Let's go ahead and do Arabic as well. And so studied that as well. And so basically it was just hammering languages at that point.
Yeah.
And now, of course, being in South Korea, have been learning Korean, which that's a whole other story. But let's put it this way: it's probably the hardest language for English speakers to learn for several reasons. So,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, so does that put you at 4 or 5 languages you speak on some level?
something like that. Yeah, yeah. I would say, give or take. I don't know if you count them all up there. You got English, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, Korean, and I wouldn't claim to be proficient in Korean by any means. I've lost a lot of my Arabic at this point, but
Okay.
Mandarin and Spanish still very, very comfortable.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
and
We
so,
gotta give you a
yeah,
test though.
yeah,
So
right.
for the languages that you know, how would you say feed my sheep in the ones that you do know? I want to hear those in the different.
If I'm being completely honest, I have no idea how to say sheep in any of them. I really
Wow.
don't. So
Yeah.
this
I
is,
mean, lamb,
I'll
do
have
you
to
know how
get
to say
studying.
lamb?
Uh,
I
quite
was gonna
frankly,
ask.
no. Yeah, I'm
So
thinking
we
right
need to
now it
get
might
up
be
on
because
the
it's late, but yeah, gotta
agriculture.
get some studying for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
some of
that'll
the
be your
agricultural language.
homework. We'll come back to that, and you'll tell us
Yeah,
how to say those things.
yeah,
I just thought it would be interesting.
yeah,
But
yeah.
no, the other thing that came into mind as you're telling your story was, and you kind of alluded to like pre-Christ experience. So when you were going through this whole process of, hey, I studied finance, and okay, there's got to be a job out there for me, and then nope, 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 and then it's kept being a series of closed doors. Was this while you were a Christian, and if so, or just tell us about that. Like, how did you handle that? And, what was your experience in, meeting Christ?
Yeah, actually, at the time, I was not a Christian. And so, thinking back on that, and I've never really reflected on this truly, but thinking back on that, as we're talking here, um, man, I kind of remember feeling like a little bit rejected and defeated. And like a lot of my self-worth was in what I did. Um, and so it was, I guess sort of tough to deal with that. Now that I'm really thinking about that, sort of tough to deal with all those closed doors. And, at this point, I feel like I'm a lot more of an emotionally healthy individual than at that time. But man, yeah, I don't know. It's just I think for anybody, it sucks to get, a bunch of doors closed and hear a bunch of no's. And I had been working in sales and marketing, prior to that, which had given me a little bit of some thick skin. But a lot of times, what that'll teach most sales and marketing professionals is how to, mask that situation. It's not really like a real coping mechanism with understanding and letting yourself feel that no and embrace it and then move on. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about. But prior to Christ, I guess, it felt a little bit more difficult and a little bit more empty and frustrating. Um, and so I think really, at that point, I had given my life over to Christ a couple of years after I had started working in the professional world. Um, and it really started to give me a bold sense of who I am as an individual. Um, and I started to get a lot stronger in my own identity. It wasn't really uh, put into the trust of others. It wasn't put into the hands of others necessarily, but rather I began to kind of find who I was as a person, and that is, a son of, the Most High. And so, like that
Mhm.
feeling of being, you know, unconditionally loved, cared for, that feeling of being taken care of, that feeling of like this sense of wholeness. You don't need to fill it with anything else. And ironically, that's about the time that my career started to take off a little bit more too.
Mm.
And so I think that there is certainly a correlation there. Obviously, there's the timing of getting into the professional world and having a little time there. And you can't ignore that. But man, like after that, it's really grown exponentially. The impact that I've been able to make for others has grown exponentially. It turned into serving others rather than trying to glorify myself through work. So
Mm.
um, it's interesting to think back on that. It's a
For
question
sure.
that's kind of made me ponder out loud right here.
Yeah.
So
No, so you grew up where your house was not religious, quote unquote. necessarily, or you guys didn't go to church. Was that accurate?
Yeah, I would call it the CEO Christians. And what that stands for is Christmas, Easter only. And so um, yeah, we went to church, but it was only for Christmas and Easter. And even then, sort of towards probably my teenage years, we just had stopped going completely. But thankfully, I had some friends in college who kind of started to plant great seeds, and slowly began to start questioning, like, why am I actually here? Like, what
Mm.
purpose do I actually have beyond just existing? Um, and so had a really great friend of mine. He jokes that he's the reason for everything good in my life because he kind of is. He introduced me to the Lord and also introduced me to my wife. And so,
Two for
um,
one special.
yeah, it's a two for one for sure. And so a really great friend of mine ended up preaching the gospel to me, told me to come to church. We were on a trip together. And I went back uh, to Colorado and we went to church, stuck around for a little bit, and eventually ended up giving my life over to Christ, just from the simple act of someone asking. And so I'll be forever grateful for what he did for me there. So,
Amen. That's
yeah.
a lot of people's story, right? It's not necessarily the Paul on the side of the road of Damascus, right? We are thankful for those incredible type of testimonies, but a lot of times it's just like you're walking through life, you have a friend or someone close by that, is just giving you the introduction, giving the invitation to come to church or something like that. So, and that's just as powerful because, eternity is forever shifted for you and many others because of those simple day-to-day relationships. We call them simple, but there's a lot that goes into that, right? Just showing up and being the light that God's given us. And so that's exciting. And of course, we'll get into this a little bit more, but you guys get to do that as well. It's like you have a day job, right? And you're helping people with business, but you're also in the ministry as well, helping out, build the church in soul as well. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So obviously the day job is still the business. Got plenty of customers to take care of and team members, and so it's a blessing to be able to do that. But after that's over for the day, our real mission out here in South Korea is we want to serve the church, we want to serve the Lord in whatever way that looks like. And so there's a wonderful church organization called Antioch, and they've got a great footprint in the States, and several footprints outside of the States in different countries and whatnot. So they happen to be planting a church out here in Seoul, and so we are fortunate enough to be a part of that. And um, while we are not the leads by any mean, we are certainly happy to contribute in whatever way we can. And so it's been really awesome to see it grow. We've met some amazing people. I've had a chance to really experience Christ's grace in several different ways in being out here. And the church speaks both English and Korean. And
Mhm.
so it's been interesting to see the comparisons between the two, even comparisons in biblical language in the Bible. It's very different from Korean to English. Some of the things just don't match up. And so that's been very fascinating as well. And it's been really enlightening to see some of the ways that Koreans might read a Bible versus how um, Americans would read a Bible uh, in English.
Wow. So what's a couple differences that you've seen that you can share?
Yeah, yeah. So here's something that blew my mind the other day. Actually, I guess not the other day, it's a few weeks ago, but we did a Bible study with one of our Korean friends, and there's, the imagery of the Holy Spirit being like a dove. And so we see dove in the Western world as this symbol of peace and like beauty, and something really amazing. But there isn't really a word for dove in Korean. They have a word for pigeon. And so they they call it pitogi. And so they talk about it as like a pigeon that comes down. And pigeons are not really clean animals. And so the way that it's portrayed for someone who may not know the story of like who the Holy Spirit is, right? Like for someone who may not understand that, the first time they're reading that, they're probably going to see it as like, oh, this is like a gross bird. Um, and that's how they would interpret it, literally. And so there's a lot of reading between the lines that needs to happen there. So I thought that that was fascinating. And then there's other parts where, when the Bible was distributed uh, long ago, the or in Korea at least, there wasn't really a communal importance of bread necessarily. Obviously, bread comes up in the Bible several times in English in the Western world. And so they ended up referring to it in the form of rice cakes or rice in general, like
Mm,
they call it tok. And
mm,
so there was a different translation, and there are updated versions now. And bread is so much of Korean culture out here. There are bakeries everywhere, but before it just wasn't really a thing necessarily. And I don't know the full historic significance of that, and I can't even begin to speak on the nuances of it. But I did find it quite interesting that some of those older transcripts had referred to it as tok, which is
oh,
um, the rice cakes or the rice snack. So very, very interesting.
definitely interesting. Now, like I mentioned before, Korea and Korean culture is close to our heart, being that my father-in-law is from Seoul and he grew up like he was, I believe, born during the Korean War, and he's got tons of crazy stories. And you check him out, River of Life Ministries, Dr. James Lee. For those of you that don't know, he's ministered all over the world, traveled, but he grew up. His mother and grandmother were devout Buddhist, and so, but he never took to it, and his dad wasn't as much religious. But he does tell a story about a Christian minister. So this would have been post-Korean War, um, you know, somehow having interactions with that. And that was his first encounter with like learning about Jesus. But, like I said, it was a very Buddhist type of culture at that time. And then I think after the war, things began to shift more. You probably could talk more into this, but of course, for people that have been kind of in the Christian culture, may have heard of Dr. Paul Young Cho, and there was a massive church, and I'm assuming it's still around, but he had a really big influence not only in Korea but across the world. And my father-in-law continues to go back to Korea, maybe not on a yearly basis, but fairly often, and ministers there as well. But your experience and some of the stuff you told me in our first call was like there's like Christian, but then it's not really. And so there's a harvest ready waiting to be um, made there in that country. So what are some of your observations of what was for some they might think like Korean's kind of Christian, right? But what's that really like?
Yeah, yeah. Christianity, well, actually, I mean, even from the start, Korea as a whole has faced a very fascinating and also very sad history. There's so many nuances to it, so many crazy things that have happened over the last several years. And it's probably one of the most fascinating stories of history of all countries in the world. And I would encourage anybody to go take a look at it. Um, and it's just the rabbit holes go so deep. And it's the same thing with Christianity in this country. The it's had such a rich history from even persecution in some cases, and there's even like a how would you call it, like a graveyard um, near us for several Christian missionaries that had lost their lives and were persecuted, and that's down the street from us and very close. And so it's kind of somber to think about, but also there's this amazing like growth of Christianity that happened here as well that led to some amazing values and strong convictions out here. And it was amazing. And several churches were built. Several of these incredible ministries were built. Um, and many people here have heard the name Jesus, which is amazing. And you can't say that about every country. But it's such a strong impact here. Churches have such a strong impact here. But some of the more interesting things that have happened, um, and I mean interesting as, maybe not so great things, uh, are particularly along the lines of cults that have been developed out here. And people have kind of twisted Christianity in some ways. And it's definitely not Christianity, we'll put it that way. But they've put themselves in a situation where now you can't even street evangelize because people will think it's a cult. Now you can't really invite people to do things because people will think it's a cult. They're so prevalent out here that it's kind of soiled the thoughts of any sort of like outreach ministry. That, and then sometimes it's very, awkward to communicate with people out of the blue in this country. I definitely don't see that very often in South Korea, and that's just a natural culture thing. But all of those things have made it very difficult to spread Christianity. But the other thing too is Koreans have this amazing gift, for the most part, of like they will go all in on anything that they do. It's amazing, and uh, it's it's a culture of some of the most hardworking people on the planet. They give their all to everything. And what I love about that is you see these amazing things like the development of Korea over the past several years from what it was before. But some of the more challenging things that happen there are burnout. Burnout is very common in the Korean church. Sometimes there are hierarchical challenges as well that happen within the church, and sort of like respect hierarchies that need to be addressed. And that's a cultural thing. And that's not necessarily something bad, but sometimes it can get in the way of someone experiencing the friendship of Christ, for example. And so with that and several other, contributing factors, we have seen over the last several years that millions and millions of people that would have been, in the church have been de-churched in Korea. And so there's an active, I guess, de-churching trend going on right now.
Mhm.
And so there's an amazing opportunity for the gospel to be shared out here in its truth and in its like friendliness. Koreans generally, not all, but generally, Koreans find it very difficult to open up with each other from what we've seen at least. Um, and so we want for them to have, this opportunity to open up with Christ, even if they can't open up with other people. And we'd obviously love for everybody to be in community as
Mhm.
the Bible tells us to be. But if that's not an option, you should have that personal relationship with God. And so um, it's a very suffocating environment in some cases. Korea has one of the highest suicide rates of the developed world, highest depression rates. There's a lot of really, I guess, undercover challenges out here that we really, want to be a part of, providing a solution and spreading love where it may not be. So again, a rich history in both, just traditional history as well as the history of Christianity here, but a ripe harvest. Ideally, we see some amazing miracles going forward here, and yeah, so it's an amazing opportunity to be out here.
Yeah, for sure. We're thankful that you guys are willing to go. And of course, in your situation, like you're primarily serving the Western world, right? US as your business. Like so that's why you're like right now it's 9 o'clock, but then you start your
Yeah.
work day like at 3 in the morning, right? To try to match
Yes.
up with what we're doing over here. So
Yeah.
quite the sacrifice to obviously run your business as well as be available to help the local church. So thankful for what you're doing, obviously. The Korean culture was this the first time for you to live outside of the United States, or had other than just taking trips and that sort of thing?
Yeah. I have traveled out of the US several times, but never have I lived in another country before. And Man, when I tell you that's come with some crazy challenges,
Yeah.
that's an understatement.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Uh,
it was making me think of that. I'm sure there's, the whole culture shock. If you have traveled out of the United States, um, and especially gone to a non-Western country, there's that whole reality of, oh, things are different. And so, the biggest question of the day is, do you like kimchi?
oh man, there is a fresh kimchi that I do like. But the more fermented version, I'm not quite a fan of. My wife loves it, and it's one of her favorite things out here, and it's great for her, but for me, not as much. So
Yeah, for those of you that are unfamiliar, there's several different types of kimchi. You might like the cucumber kimchi, there's some that are not spicy and like not fermented. Our whole family, we're kimchi people. My kids have grown up with it, so and actually Korean food is, if I'm going to say what's my favorite cuisine, it's going to go Korean for me. So
yeah,
I'm all in. I
yeah.
like early days when I was first getting to know the family, like I was dating Jenny, we were at a Korean restaurant and ordered kimchi jjigae. And are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
So that's
yeah.
like hardcore. It's
Yep.
essentially a massive bowl of just like kimchi
A
soup.
bowl of kimchi water. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a lot, but I mean, I ate it. But uh, let me hear your definition of how kimchi comes to life.
Oh man. Define comes to life. Tell me a little bit more about
Well,
what
how
you're
do
looking
people
for.
make it? I mean, I'm sure there's different ways, but there's like traditional. Are you familiar
Yeah.
with the traditional way that they make kimchi?
Yeah, I honestly I know that there's a bunch of prep involved, but it's really just it's fermented cabbage. I mean,
Yeah,
it's as simple as
that's
that.
the
Um,
you don't
yeah.
have to now, but you like I think the old ladies probably still do this where they bury it in their yard. So they
Yeah.
mix all the
Yeah.
stuff up and they let it like sit. I don't know how long. But yeah. So anyway, thing with
Yeah.
kimchi people, like if you haven't had it, it's usually a love-hate relationship. Like people either love
Yeah.
it or hate it. And like I said, that's the most important thing we covered today.
It's
Uh,
great for your gut. I do know that. I mean, it's better than any yogurt you could have. It's better than any, probiotic. It's good, it's natural, and it definitely is like it's healthy. But
yeah.
the taste is polarizing to say the least.
Definitely,
Uh,
definitely. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm sure there are other things and other cultures that you could compare to as far as like some people love it, some people hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of these other like cultural things that has been a little bit of a challenge for you to, shift into?
Yeah, I think really the biggest thing, man, you just like whatever you learned growing up, you just have to completely throw it all out the window when you move to a country on the other side of the planet. Um, we found in Korea that's just so different. There's a bunch of things that I love about that, though. That's not a negative thing necessarily. Like, there's several things that have been amazing about that.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, things are different, but even down to the language. I mean, you speak backwards effectively. Um, it's instead of being like a subject verb object type of language, it's a subject object verb language. So the way that you speak is different. There's like a hierarchy of politeness in the language itself, which has been interesting. Um, I you can't quote me on this for sure, but I believe there's like 7 levels of hierarchy to the language. And so depending on who you're speaking with, you may speak to them differently. And so for English speakers, it's a very big challenge because really the most formal things that we have are sir or ma'am and that sort of language. In Korean, it's a whole different way of conjugating verbs or the type of verbs that you use, or the type of words that you use. That's been very interesting. Um, the other thing too is like just a general respect to culture and a little bit of individualistic culture meshed with homogenous culture. Everybody kind of keeps to themselves, but everybody does the same thing. Everybody kind of like feels the vibe around them. They call it nunchi, which is like it really there's no translation other than like kind of like the vibe, I guess, of the room. Um, and so they can kind of they're really good at picking up on cues, social cues. Koreans are exceptional at that because the culture kind of is built in with a bunch of these different cues, which we found out. And of course, like I can say all of this, but I at the end of the day still have no idea what I'm talking about. Like I can live here for 10 years and I probably still won't know what I'm talking about. But these are just things that I've observed thus far is they just have a way of doing things that's almost completely backwards to what the US is. Food culture has been interesting. The way that people just kind of sit down, usually someone takes the lead, picks the order, you order a set, everybody goes ahead and just gets it. It's not really individual. You don't go to a coffee shop and get a bunch of customizations to your drink. You just get what you get because the drink's good and they make it how they want to make it. And in some cases, that's nice because then you don't have the paralysis by analysis type of thing when you jump into the coffee shop. But anyway, like even that coffee shops, that's a whole other thing too. Big cafe culture out here. Every block, dozens and dozens of coffee shops. And I love it. I mean, it's amazing. It's very fun. And you just go, you sit down at a cafe. There was a sheep cafe, funny enough. That one's pretty fun. You actually go, you can pet the sheep, hang out with them. That's an awesome opportunity there. There's different themed cafes. There's one that's like a rain report. It's called Rain Report. It's got raindrops and all sorts of different weather themed. It's like a everything's kind of a black shade, a black hue in there. It looks kind of clean and neat. And then there's just the simple coffee shops, like the one downstairs from us that sells coffee and gelato.
Mm.
And there's a bunch of people that just get their laptops out and work in there. And there's a coffee shop for everybody. There's one's floating on the Han River. Those are fun, great view. You can take tours to the DMZ as well, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. There's a cafe in there. You can totally believe it. There's Lotte Tower, fifth tallest tower in the world. There's a cafe at the top of that. That's my favorite one. I love tall buildings. I hate heights, but I love tall buildings, which is very ironic. Um, but yeah, so cafe culture is interesting.
Yeah, so
Um, but yeah,
my daughter's the oldest daughter is the most Korean out of all my kids. And so when she graduated high school, her gift from her father or from my father-in-law, her grandpa, was to go to South Korea. And so
yeah,
that
yeah.
was a cool experience for her, that whole cafe culture, because they went and visited some of those different themed ones and stuff. So yeah,
It's so
that's
fun.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's awesome. One of the things too that kind of going back to some of the ministry stuff that we were discussing before, it kind of struck me, the idea that the Korean culture is like all in, which I can 100% attest to that. Like that was why like my father-in-law had he always talks about I was the best sinner, he was like in gangs, and even though he was from a well-to-do family, but he was just like when he was bad. And
yeah,
then when he met Jesus after moving to America, he's all in, right? And he's
yeah,
everywhere you go. He's traveled all over the world ministering the gospel. And so I see that. But then the idea that, there's burnout and there's this, you said de-churching, maybe there's some deconstruction. That's a, language that's been tossed around a lot in the last few years. But it's this idea that you can get to where you're working too much for your salvation. Like you can work out your salvation, but it's not works based. And I don't know if that's what you're seeing in the culture, like with this whole, everybody's got the respect thing, which is great, but taken out of context or going too far, then all of a sudden you get these weird things going on. Like everybody's working, they're deferring to somebody based on how you're 6 months older than me. I got to talk to you this way. And because I've, you know, Korean culture has blown up over the last several years. Like K-dramas are a big deal, right? And K-pop
yeah,
Demon Hunter just won an Oscar, so we're getting a lot bigger picture of what it is to be in Korea. But, there's, like you said, there's all these little things that are, you know, uh, factoring together that I feel like, Jesus wants to speak into, right? This whole idea of that, yes, obviously give your best to the Lord, but it's for the Lord. It's not because, your elder told you to do it or that sort of thing. Is that the question was really based around this works based. Is that something that you see as an issue that Jesus wants to go after?
Yeah, I would say it absolutely is. And I like I have to be really careful about the way that I say this because there's so much good about these ministries that it's hard to uncover the stuff that is, less good.
Mm,
Um, and I have to be sensitive to that because you know, these ministries do amazing things for the community. They do amazing things for the people. Um, but quite honestly, like I've heard stories of people who have been very hurt by like the hierarchical issues there. Um, and again, I mean that stuff's going to happen anywhere. But some of the stuff I've heard here has been just a little bit more intense and more, I don't know, rigid, so to say. And I do see that there's like a strong works-based, theology that tends to come up. And uh, for me, that's sad because I really want people to experience the wholeness of Christ through the grace that it's been given to them through. Um, and so, yeah, I see it, I recognize it, and I think it's just one of those things where it is redeemable. There are people that definitely um, they've been hurt, but I think that there's a lot of hope for those people who have been hurt as well. And it's the same thing that we see in ministries around the world. But man, maybe it's just because I live here, but it feels much more intense here than any of the stories I've heard in the States. So
yeah. Well, we'll be praying for you and all that you're doing. Of course, coming back to Lamb Telecom, I want people to go check that out. So your website, shout it out.
yeah, it's just lambtele.com. Just spells Lamb Telecom. So
Oh yeah, got it.
yeah,
Lambdella.com. Very
I
nice.
always say I thought I was being slick there, but it ended up being much more difficult to explain that over the phone than if I just did lambtelecom.com, which will
Right.
also go to my website
So you got
because
both
it's
of them.
linked.
We're
But
we're covered
yeah,
here.
we're
So,
good.
you know, we want people to check that out, especially if you're looking for technology. Can you kind of give us like a good picture of like some ideal type customers that you help on a regular basis?
Yeah, definitely. If you buy technology, you're probably going to save money just by giving us a call. There's a very high likelihood, and with 80 to 90% chance between there that you would save money. And really, that'll be, any client that's working with phones, internet, cybersecurity, backup, disaster recovery, security cameras, access control, managed services, utilities, copiers, pretty much anything, you name it. Um, we really won't help with hardware. I'm not a good resource for that. But if it's a software, a subscription, if you pay for it monthly, you're probably going to be very glad you called. And it's worth the consultation costs as well as the advisory costs beyond that, which of course are free. So
Right. Can't be free. It's the
yeah,
gospel, right? It's our best thing
yes,
that we have. Free, but it costs you everything um,
exactly.
at the same time. So yeah, make sure you avail yourself to Zach's services and what he's doing to help the body of Christ in the business world and the ministry, right, with the churches as well. I think you have quite a few churches that you help out. And
Yeah,
so we're glad that you're there, being a resource. And I talked to Zach before, like I said, and he's not going to fix your IT problems, although he might have someone that he can refer. He's not your, call him because your phone's not working guy. But so just want to make that clear to everybody as well. But super
yeah,
glad to have you with us and hear a little bit about your story and how you got to Seoul and what you're doing there as well. It's just an amazing thing that you guys are able to be there, you and your wife, just supporting the local church as we all, as believers of Christ, in Christ, we have that role no matter what, right? We might have the day job where it may not be, oh, quote unquote ministry, but it is, right? It's still, you're called there to be a light, just like you were saying with your friend that was a light to you and just every day. And so we need to understand that we have that role as well. Zach, I want to give you the final word here. What's a word of encouragement or something you'd like to share, leave with the people today?
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. I feel blessed to have the chance to chat with you, and of course, blessed to be here in Korea. Man, I think final word would just be like go out there and tell someone about Jesus. It's that simple. It really is. It worked for me. It has worked for several people as we've been here in Korea, and I know it'll work for your friends, your family. I know you want it for them as well. If you earnestly desire Christ yourself, I know that you earnestly desire it for everybody around you. So um, go tell them about the Lord.
Amen and amen. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is Lord. Amen. Thank you so much, Zach, and for everyone tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the Sheep Feast family. And until next time, we'll see you on the 2000 Cubit Rule.